as a funding option, So therefore, how do you see tomorrow when a lot of family offices start to come on road and you starting to compete with the family offices as a funding engine? How do you see your competitiveness? Because possibly a lot of things which in terms of a sector focused approach and the having seen it and done that pieces which come in on the table possibly could be counted as pointers on competitiveness. So how do you see that piece sort of panning out?
I actually don't see as much competition at the very early or the seed stage, really. I think we're seeing that a lot of family offices are coming in once the company has been seeded and they've demonstrated something for, let's say, 12, 18 months, and they're now raising either a seed plus round or they're raising Series A. I think family offices I'm seeing are willing to write larger checks and come in at that stage simply because some amount of the risk has been eaten out already by a seed fund like us, and they're willing to participate and hence willing to put in more money to play as well. And I think that works out really well because one of the things that we've seen clearly so far has been that it always takes much longer for a company to be able to get to Series A than they think it will when they start off. Usually you're looking at assuming that one raises a seed funding of, let's say, anywhere from $200,000 up to $500,000, and you'd like to get to Series A at $1 million or a couple of $1 million within, let's say, 12, 18 months. Typically it takes longer, but then you're obviously running out of capital. And I think at that stage, I'm seeing that there's an interesting, sort of sweet spot where, family offices could come in, and I'm seeing that happen even with some of the deals that we're working on currently. And the reason why I think we may not see that much competition at the very early or the seed stage from family offices, and why an entrepreneur might choose a seed fund over a family office, I think is simply because, the network and the access to markets and other things which a fund can bring may or may not be something that a family office will be able to do. And I think there's also a diversity in investments which a fund has. As a consequence, because of that, you're able to see patterns and you're able to bring that network also to support entrepreneurs, which could be very critical at the early stage. And once you're at the growth stage or almost getting there, perhaps there's more of a value that one would see from a family office. So I think that's how I'm seeing entrepreneurs look at it. But I think the other point, of course, remains that I sense that at the early stage, competition for competing for deals may not be as much between a family office and a seed fund or a venture fund, because the approaches tend to be a little different as well.
Would you say that there could be possibilities where some of your matured enterprises could end up into if they are in the auto space, could end up into Salil's family office?
Absolutely. It's very likely that
So
could
therefore,
happen.
how do you plan to engage with family offices focused on such asset classes to see that such possibilities start to emerge? Because the family offices are in search of deals which are, sort of sticky to them, and something which could be a very healthy exit route for funds like United.
I think it's really engaging the ecosystem as much as we can. In a lot of situations, I mean, for example, as a fund, what we've offered to our own investors is preferred co-investing rights at the next round. So clearly a way to engage them ends up being that, we make the seed investment, but the next round, alongside us, we also get a family office to invest, and that need not necessarily be our own LPs. I think we're happy to open that up to other people as well. But I think a lot of that ecosystem building will have to happen through continuous engagement, and I think just reaching out to as many people as we can as a fund, and engaging them better to sort of, get them to understand the process a little better as well.
Sure. So I think, once again, getting to the contours of real estate, which is an interesting perspective to the panel today, So, real estate is something, again, which is looked at, as I said, more from a risk-reward situation, a very interesting asset class. What are the efforts which you continue to take, in terms of making the ecosystem of family offices more aware of what entails investing into a real estate fund and possibly participating through a much richer funnel of deals which possibly you all can come out with?
I think I'll take on from where Binayak said that, the biggest advantage of going through the fund route is that you actually get a platform to actually diversify your portfolio and therefore the risk. Because, on my own, as a family office, probably I will restrict my transaction to either the place where I am located or I have my own presence, etc., etc. I will not go, for looking for transaction across the country. Okay? The biggest comfort which they draw from while dealing with the fund house is that here is a platform which, traverses the length and breadth of the country and keeps on looking at, different types of transactions across different kind of geographies, asset classes and sub-asset classes, which obviously in a way helps you allocate or rather spread the allocation across sub-asset classes, geographies, and therefore, spread the risk. What we do as a process is that, which is more from our own consumption point of view, is that over a period of last couple of years, the transactions process or the deal sourcing process has become far more rigorous than it has ever been, whether it's a debt kind of a transaction or a debt with equity or equity alone. So today, if I have to make an investment, the minimum number of transactions I'll go through would be about maybe 18 to 20, right? And this will be across the country, provided they're within the framework within which you're looking for a transaction. So in the bargain, what happens is that you might end up shortlisting maybe 4 or 5 transactions, of which you might just go ahead and do, actually invest in just 1 or 2. The other 3 are either part of your pipeline or something which is attractive enough from a family office perspective, either to take a stake directly or come along with us, and maybe we could actually look at then doing a co-investment in those transactions along with them. We also keep on showcasing a lot of these transactions to families purely from a co-investment perspective, because as a family, there's a huge amount of comfort, because as a part of DNA, they like to own it. They like to own that piece of business, whether it is in part or in whole, and they actually see sense in holding it for a longer period of time. Now, this is the only area where probably from a family's perspective, investing through fund does not necessarily always work in their favor, because from a fund's perspective, you get into a transaction purely driven by your fund's objective, return, blah, blah, blah. So when it's time for you to wind up, you also approach the family, say, fine, now let's get out of this transaction. But I think, one, to keep the engagement alive, we keep on showcasing a lot of transactions to a lot of families which are interested across the country of different kind, which actually in true sense is huge value add to their entire portfolio assessment system. 2, we also keep on throwing a lot of co-investment opportunities, which again gives them a huge sense of comfort, because if I'm a Bombay-based family office and I'm being showcased at transactions of Chennai or a Bangalore or a Pune, which I know that on my own probably I may not even want to have a look at it, but sounds interesting, becomes a very attractive proposition for them. See, I mean, the real estate is a business which will always remain the first love as far as Indian family is concerned, right? And family office is a much bigger extension of the Indian family, right? So real estate can never fall out of favors. I mean, you can archaically hate it, love it, but you can't ignore it, right? So real estate is going to be a part of the portfolio. Only thing is the entire process of investing into real estate has evolved. And with the way the family offices are now being structured, and you actually find a lot of professionals, getting into family office to put a very, very organized structure in place for investment through allocation and portfolio diversification model. I think this entire process will get far more intense going forward, and you'll find that the universe is actually becoming much, much bigger going forward.
So I think, one very interesting perspective which we look to sort of cover as part of this discussion is that, how does direct or fund investing intermix with the families launching new ventures, and there possibly I'd like to share, our experience on doing that, where, possibly we did not conceptualize entering into the businesses of water, clean energy and energy storage at the time when the Luminous Schneider transaction, sort of happened. And as we moved through the last 3 years, we sort of navigated through and, found that these are ventures which are very aligned to our capabilities and skill sets which the group has sort of nurtured over the years, and makes sense to, diversify into spaces like these. Now, when in terms of leveraging the advantages of having a family office structure, or a fund structure together with the homegrown startup environment which has sort of got created. The interesting perspectives which have come up from our side is, on one side, when we, incubate ventures, there are a lot of ideas which come up when we engage with funds, which are possibly very interesting cases and could be very interesting even from a strategic direction, wherein a venture in water where one could look at investing through a fund may end up being a strategic sale to a LiftPure. So therefore, there are interesting synergies which possibly one would not have thought of, but which start to unfold with the own group ventures and the family office structure working in parallel. Benaifer, I would want to sort of understand, have you seen that piece in terms of cross leveraging of advantages where ventures operating parallel to the family office setup and seeing sort of cross advantages sort of starting to see?
Oh, absolutely. I think, the fact that we have a fund internally and at the same time we look at, a family office setup which looks to encourage entrepreneurs, we see a lot of synergies there at most point in times. Also because the network is pretty close-knit, plus any entrepreneur who comes to us sees it as a one-stop shop, so he can, in that sense, have an option to showcase it to the family or take it on the fund side. So yeah, we have a lot of cross-referencing that we keep doing across Nirvana and Ray. And we actually even kind of go to the extent of comparing notes or finding out industry details which are very, very relevant for these kind of transactions. So I think overall, yeah, the synergies are great. I just wanted to add one point on the discussion that went across in the last round, and Shri mentioned that, entrepreneurs are, very keen to fund at the seed fund level, and his interest and his own perspective of how he sees that piece. One limited point I have there is that the entrepreneur lot that I meet somehow have a mindset that some funds which will come in at very, very early stages might, kind of jeopardize their interests in the long run. There's a lot of apprehension across Indian entrepreneurs, at least that I've seen who come across. And we normally ask them this question, that why are you at my table? Why are you not approaching Unitas or any of the other funds who are around? And that's I think more I see, and more so at the seed level, because they don't want to let go at that early stage, and they seem to have some amazing chemistry around how an entrepreneur family has come up and will somehow safeguard his or her interest in the venture till they feel appropriate to encash. So I think that's one limited point I wanted to make there.
So I think, Shri, possibly if you would want to add on the fact that, again, as far as, that apprehension piece goes, and we have a very, healthy audience on entrepreneurs who possibly now are, get a very fresh perspective on, is it actually the story, So is it actually that the draconian is seen in a VC versus a comfort in terms of, the empathy which possibly a family office can bring on an entrepreneur's table?
I'd agree, and I think one of the things that we've seen as a differentiator as a seed fund, as Unitas itself, is that we're the people, the team that's come together at Unitas, none of us are actually financial investors. All of us have been business operators. So I think that's played a role in ensuring that entrepreneurs, aren't necessarily there's not that little fear. But I think the bigger risk that I see today, though, ends up being that if folks take a seed investment from someone that's typically a Series A investor, then that I'm sensing is a bigger risk, because if that Series A investor doesn't follow through and do what they're typically supposed to do, which is write $1 million check once you've gone past the seed stage, I think that just kills it for the entrepreneur straight away. Whereas as a seed fund, sometimes I can argue and say that, look, we only do seed investments, and the reason we didn't follow on in an investment is because we don't do follow on. But I think the risk is bigger. But I agree with Benaifer's point around, yes, there are times when entrepreneurs feel that they're best understood by entrepreneurs, and hence taking money from another entrepreneur, I think, is something that you see people do across the line. I mean, you hear classic stories of all of the other e-commerce founders putting in seed money into early stage companies as well. So clearly there is merit to it and understanding, but I think the advantage that perhaps the seed fund brings there is being able to follow through on network connections and most importantly, I think the role that we play ends up being helping these companies raise the next round of capital, because there aren't any investment bankers at the couple of $1 million or $3 million ticket sizes where you're trying to raise money. And there, I think there's a significant value that perhaps a seed fund might be able to offer over and above a family office type. But I think I still feel like a lot of this is an environment of coexisting, not necessarily as much of competing.
So I think I'll just bring a perspective on the social and impact consideration. Salil, how do you, as in beyond the early stage investment activity which you look to do from a strategic perspective, how do you look at engaging with this ecosystem more from a social context? Is there something very specific in mind, or it's more a conventional CSR activity which you all participate in?
Right. So we are definitely open to probably investing in funds that create that social impact, because people who are in, for example, in Unitas or Will Grow or funds like that, where we cannot actually influence that level of scale and impact that these funds with their contacts and stuff can do. But we traditionally keep on doing the regular CSR activities that we do on our own. But I think we are, as the next generation, definitely open to helping people like Unitas and Will Grow to and breed entrepreneurs that are creating social impact at the bottom of the pyramid level. And that's something as a group, any corporate is very difficult to do, because there's a lot of effort that goes into that. And we leave it to the experts who understand how entrepreneurs can create social impact and let them do that. So we try to contribute, we were open to contributing through these to funds like Unitas or Will Grow or anybody else out there. Yeah.
I think let us sort of come back again to the, one of the important agendas which we look to sort of address around how do we get more domestic capital into the PEVC asset class, because, we even heard, our Prime Minister talking about, a large venture fund to be floated for entrepreneurs, and, there is greater appreciation of the fact that we need the entrepreneurial fraternity to sort of get kick-started by that early stage capital being available. And, it would be in the interest of the country to have greater capital from domestic sources than, from the foreign sources, because at the end of it, when big exits happen, it's actually money going out of the country. So, which is earned money, money earned in the country going out. So therefore, possibly, if each one of you could sort of share, starting Vinay, on, how do you see a greater participation of, or a greater involvement of family offices, and possibly bringing them onto the fold that something like this exists. And, it's important both from their social side of a participation and even from a commercial side for, for them to stay alive to the fact that this is an asset class which should not go without their, having looked at it.
So I think as far as our group is concerned, I think we've incubated one of the funds, so naturally we are pretty much on the same page as what you suggest and what the way most things are following now. I think moreover, we need to establish that this will be a trend which will take a while. I think what can help this trend build further is, I think one thing that we experience from our lens is that, I think private equity players need to be fairly more transparent and more engaging. So just like if I invest in a, let's say a liquid mutual fund investment, every month end I get to know exactly where the fund stands, the access to the fund managers and the like. I think the industry at this point in time suffers from that like a black hole kind of concept which is there in everyone's mind, which can only be changed by repetitive engagement, especially of the families. And you see, if you have institutional investors like anybody like Temasek or any of the others, the fund does report its progress on a very, very regular basis with the key updates to that institution. But if a same family office investor were to ask for that update, I'm not too sure how it would go down. So I think that is a key difference. The transparency norms in private equity need to really go up.
So you asked two questions, right? One was regarding the family offices and domestic money coming in versus international money coming in. I mean, I would agree with Benefit. There definitely that transparency levels from the PE side have to go up, and there is that lack of that fear entrepreneurs that we invest in versus a PE. There's that whole thing that okay, I have to make sure that we report and stuff like that, and that is definitely there, and that, I think the family offices need to start getting a little more this thing on that, stricter on that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Milestone's probably been super successful in actually raising domestic capital, right? I think a lot of it is ecosystem building, and in some ways, given that we were a new fund, we figured that one of the things that we would need to do in order to be able to let people know what we're doing is to be a little more public. So we do a fair bit of marketing. We've done, we've ensured that we're getting cost-effective PR. And that's actually translated reasonably well for us. So every time we would make it to Economic Times with a story about our fundraising, there would always be someone or the other reaching out to us online and saying, hey, I'm actually interested in investing in your fund. We've actually raised close to $1 million just online effectively, which is an interesting crowdfunding way of doing it. But these are individuals or family offices who didn't know about us, read about us, went onto our website and filled out a little form saying, yeah, we want to invest a couple of crores. And we were smart enough to close them. So I think it's changing, but it'll probably take a fair bit of time. You are starting to see more, I think clearly under with the AIF regime coming in, and I think we've now seen probably over 120 funds registered under AIF. So that's actually, you're seeing more fund managers come in as well. Things like, ensuring that, so I think this is likely to happen, but NRI money will now get treated on par with local money. That will actually unlock a fair bit of effectively domestic capital, because this is NRI money, but it's all sitting as rupee capital in India. And until now, if you were an AIF and you wanted to access that, it's possible, but you would have to get regulatory approvals and things like that. So with that changing, I think you'll start to see more and more. But at the same time, it'll be hard to try and bring it to the same stage, or you can't make it retail investing. I think you need a sophisticated investor who understands this as an alternative asset class. So you can't go that extreme either. But I do feel that with time you're starting to see it change with both with fund managers increasing and people starting to get excited. I think today, given that you see startups raising money every single day, I mean, you open Economic Times today, there's always at least 3 or 4 stories every single day of companies raising money. And I'm sensing that wealthy individuals, ultra HNIs and family offices in India are all thinking now, how do I get into this action? How do I get a piece of this action? And so it's probably, it is on the up clearly.
Do you see some, in terms of furthering this in a much bigger institutional platform, do you see, bringing together, the fund managers on a scale and then possibly doing road shows to family offices to say that something like this exists? Or do you see the family office advisors to be more proactive to pick up and get those, get the two stakeholders on the same board more often?
I think it's more of the latter. You're seeing a lot of the wealth managers now starting to actually play a role. We've met with, good conversations with a variety of wealth managers today, and I think that's likely to, continue. I don't know. I think given that I still don't know if you can do a roadshow type of thing, because this is not necessarily a mass appeal type of an asset class, right? And the numbers you're talking about, even though they're large, I mean, relatively it's still a small number of people that would be interested in something like this. So I think, groups like wealth managers, I'm sensing are playing a role.
Naveen, any perspectives of yours on, mobilizing domestic capital?
Yeah, actually, I would like to bring in some different perspective here. See, any experience of this kind is an outcome of one, the partnership. Who's the partner I've worked with, and what has been my experience of what I have received vis-a-vis what I was told, right? And linked to that is what Benifit touched upon is transparency, right? Uh, I'll probably stick to the real estate side because that becomes more relevant given the organization I represent. See, on the real estate side, there was a euphoria between 2005 and 2010. Almost everybody came, raised large sums of money. Every possible brand of the country raised lots of large sums of money. There was a very clearly defined agenda. They find this is what is going to happen over a period of next 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 years. Somewhere post 2009, the scenario has not worked out the way it was expected to be. So from an investor's perspective, the experience has not been very pleasant, right? There could be various factors attributed to it, but as an investor, I have not had a very pleasant experience of what I had allocated this money for and what I ended up getting. The learning was very clear, and which a lot of people did try to implement immediately thereafter, is that one, try to bring in element of transparency to the extent that people can relate with, right? Now, this is not a mutual fund business, private equity. So, as panelists are saying, that this is a business where you require sophisticated investors. In simple English, people who understand the risk associated with this business and how this business is structured primarily. You require that level of understanding. Somewhere, I think these two things have not played out the way it was expected to.
But who do you think would take that ownership of educating that, the family offices on this and,
Yeah, so I was coming to that. Good you raised this question. So it's a two-way approach, right? While from a funds perspective, at least on the real estate side, we are very keen to have a regulator, right? Unless and until there's a regulator, okay, the basic yardsticks or benchmarks will never be defined. So therefore, my story will hold true as much as your story, right? So I will be able to justify why I have gone to a Chikmagalur to invest in, why not a Bombay, and same thing probably you can also do, right? And we both will be good and, justifying a story. Moment the yardsticks are defined, probably the base assessment criteria have been defined. Okay, that's more on the fund side, which one keeps, talking about every now and then. Because if you do not have the basic yardsticks, then it is basically whatever suits my convenience and my business becomes my yardsticks, which may not necessarily be appreciated by you. On the family office side, which actually the trend has already begun, you'll find more and more people actually engaging professionals who look at this more from a asset allocation and business perspective than, okay, yet another investment opportunity. And that actually has already begun. Only thing it will probably in times to come, you'll find probably, otherwise 5 years ago, I don't think we heard family offices, investing in a tech startup. I mean, not heard of, or a real estate fund with, which is investing in senior living. So these boutique concepts were never heard of. It was only tried and tested, okay, land, let me go for it. Those kind of things. So I think it's a combination of both. And unless and until the experience factor, again, I come back to that, is good, I don't think I will go for a repeat, investment into that area. But it has to be a handshake of both. It can't be one alone.
Shri, you had something
Yeah,
to
the other thing that we started to see as we started to raise money, early days of fundraising, I think one of the things was it looked like there was a fair bit of PE fatigue which had set in, because people that invested in funds in 2008, 2009, and these were typically, India is not used to 10-year funds, and we are a 10-year fund, and most funds in India are 5 years. So people that invested in 2008, come 2014, there's no sign of exits. The fund managers have disappeared. There's someone else that's actually there, and they've done 5+1+1, which was the extension, but still no exits. And that started to become a huge challenge. So people were saying, look, we've already put money into funds. We're not seeing exits, and we're not sure if we want to continue backing these kind of fund managers anymore, and hence we don't really want to look at you. And I think 5 years is a huge challenge. It takes it, and typically if you're doing very early stage investing, it takes at least 3 to 4 years for a company to get to a certain maturity. And then you'll probably have to wait it for at least another 3 years to get a meaningful exit. I mean, the growth curve is going to be like this. You cannot exit in 18 months to be realizing much of a value. So I think that perhaps needs to change. And as a consequence, for us to sell a 10-year fund became very, very difficult. It took a fair bit of time to get investors to on board with that idea itself. So
So the
just wanted to
demonstration of
add that.
success per se is very critical for onboarding of new family offices on the asset class. I think we are sort of just running short of time. We'll open the floor for questions. Possibly we can have 2 questions from the floor, for any of the panelists.